How's everybody doing today?
Fantastic.
I'm all right.
Ushers,
Out.
good to be in the house of the Lord. Another special day with Father's Day going on. We've got a few good things planned out. We got some gifts for the lucky fathers who answer the questions right. I'm sure Mike's got a good Sunday school lesson. Got some stuff for the service to do today at the beginning, but most importantly, we're here to worship the Lord today.
Amen.
If it wasn't for God, none of us would be here today. None of us fathers would have the kids that we have.
That's right.
And life wouldn't be that good if it wasn't for God. It wouldn't be any good if it wasn't for God. So glad to have a few people we don't normally get to see today, here today, to enjoy the day with their dads and grandpas and all that. 1 week report, 6 pounds, gone. Ladies, I know, just like my wife says, I know you're not as enthused for me. You say, these men, how we can lose weight so much easier. We were riding up, and Mary was telling Taylor about how the exercises she does and everything. And I had the music. I always listen to music loud. Me and Mike both do that. So I'm listening to my gospel channel and heard that. So I just pressed the button. I said, "No exercising, 6 pounds." They didn't take that very well. I'm riding with a bunch of James is my only confidant. I'm riding with all those girls in the car.
You took your life into danger.
Yeah, I've done that quite often.
But you plateau and stay there for a while quicker than us women do, so just remember that.
You'll plateau.
You started this gender thing, man. I ain't
Well, you're going to go right back into it. I'm just leading up to
Yeah,
you.
mine's biblical. Yours is just your opinion.
Get it straight.
We are made,
I can't argue that one, can I?
we are made different.
I'll have an hour to think about it, though. All right, all the children. Sister Christy is back, and she looks excited to be able to teach. So let's let the kids go ahead and make their way back to the back. And Brother Mike will ask you to make your way up here.
The reason that I can say that is because I'm on the same diet as I lost a pound. So, there's my weekly report for you. It sucks.
I've lost
So I don't know where he is. I'm not feeling his
10
success.
pounds in 3 weeks. So,
Okay, so last week, great class last week, I think. We had
Everybody, all you guys trying to lose weight, and here I am begging to gain about 20 pounds.
well, honey,
My
you
20
can have
pounds.
mine. Yeah, you have mine. You keep coming around and we'll fatten you up.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have said
Good
that.
batch, I tell you, a good batch of chicken and dumplings from my niece would probably do about 10 pounds.
Okay.
Something
How many calories is that?
like 2,000.
Beyond-
0.
3,000.
I'm serious. I want to meet the
You
guy.
can have one bean.
I got one bean. I want to meet the man who decides what a serving size is. I want to see what he looks like.
He's little.
Yeah, real little.
We eat these, you know.
Yeah. My comment, this is about something I put on Facebook because I'm counting calories. And I went on the internet. Now, nobody jumped on the whole thing. Somebody has to fact check internet, right? I mean, it's on the internet. It should be right. But it's not.
He's a French mom.
Carol worked in dietary.
These are
It's on the internet. It's gotta be right.
Carol worked in dietary at the hospital, so.
Well, I had a list of 40 to 50 foods that have 0 calories, and I was in the store picking them up, reading there isn't a single one that had 0.
Pickles.
At 5. If you read it further on down, my eyes from all these calories must have been blurry because it was actually 5. So at the end of the day, I was over 40.
Water and a toothpick is what you need, brother.
Water and a toothpick.
That's what you call a pine float.
Oh, what?
A pine float.
Right on. Okay. I think I can convince that guy to make a steak 200 calories. It ain't gonna take much at all. Bag of cement and chain. I'll redefine everything. Last week we talked about the conversation. Well, we talked about the conversation between the serpent and Eve. We had a great discussion, I felt, I think. You guys can share how you thought about it, but I thought it was a good discussion about the things in a few of the verses that indicate that while Adam may or may not have been in the immediate area, he was not part of that conversation between Eve. That was just between the serpent and Eve. And that the deceit of the serpent and Eve, we talked about that. We also talked about how we believe that Adam was not deceived by Eve and that he took knowingly of the forbidden fruit. He knew what he was doing. He may not have been a part of the conversation, but he knew what it was that he was eating before he ate it. So we also talked about how the serpent worked on this and how he picked one vessel and drove his wedge in between the two of them. Instead of trying to have to convince both of them to disobey God, he just convinced one of them. And then all of a sudden then it was 2 against 1 and it was easier to make them. And that's how he works today. In a marriage, he'll find a crack in the wall and he'll drive a wedge in there to try to mess up your relationship with your wife or your husband. And that this is another foundational event that we need to look at because it's a good lesson on how cunning and smart and deceitful and what a con man the devil is.
Evil.
Yeah. Well, his intent is pure evil. You know, but he'll say the most beautiful things to try to convince you to follow him and do what he wants you to do. So we talked all about that. And today we pick up where we left off, which was verse 7 in chapter 3. And verse 7 says, "And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden." So, for a quick word study, sewed is tafart, and it means to sew together. A fig is tihin, and it's a fig tree. And the aprons are kagor, and it means a girdle or a belt or a loin covering or armor. Lord is Jehovah, and God is Elohim. And this one I made sure we put up there because we got to understand what this means. Kul is ruach, and it means wind or spirit or breath. Not necessarily temperature as one might assume by the word cool. So if you have this visual, Adam and Eve have partaken in this forbidden fruit, and a nice breeze comes around. That's the Spirit of God coming for them. They might hear the rustling of the leaves on the trees and the ferns and all the foliage of the ground, and they hear Him. They know what that is. They recognize the Spirit immediately. And we talk about how the Spirit is often referred to with the wind. When we talked in the beginning of the creation, how He sent the Spirit across the ocean. And you can see that was a wind. How the wind and the Spirit went through the upper room on the day of Pentecost. The Spirit is often referred to as wind. And we see here that we're talking about God Himself, and God and the Spirit are the same. And that's how Adam and Eve knew who He was, and they knew that they needed to hide themselves. And then presence, as you can see, panim, and it means faces or face, presence, person. Now, some of the things that I've read up on with these two verses is their eyes are opened. Obviously, we all know that that's a figure of speech. They weren't blind before they ate. They had eyesight. What it means is that they became aware.
Yes.
They were enlightened. They had knowledge that they did not know before. They understood what was right and wrong because they now have participated in it. And the best example that I can give you in what this means is, how can you explain to anybody else what it's like to be drunk if you've never been drunk before a day in your life?
You can't.
Right.
How do you explain the hangover? How do you explain the sickness?
Can't.
You know, you can't. Because you just don't know. Adam and Eve would not be able to explain to anybody the second prior to disobeying God what it would be like to be sinful, or to be disobedient, or to be fallen. They didn't know. They did everything that they were supposed to do. They were perfect. They were God's perfect creation, and they obeyed everything He said. So at this moment, you know, they had gained knowledge. Now, it wasn't a good knowledge. It was knowledge that they weren't intended to have. So Adam and Eve now have knowledge of wrong because they have committed wrong. I don't know if anybody has ever seen fig leaves before, but that's what they look like. And you can see that on a fig tree, they are of various sizes and their stems long enough. I found this interesting because I wanted to know what that would look like. It's not, you know, you just see those pictures of what, you know, a little leaf here or there looks like, but they could actually make themselves a nice size, I'm going to say kilt, not skirt, because I'm a man.
It's a
It's a kilt.
It's a skirt.
They could make themselves a kilt.
It's called a skirt.
With and in autumn it would be a nice colored kilt with those nice size leaves there. So that's what that looked like. Now, my question to you is trying to put ourselves in the garden with Adam and Eve. Have you ever sat and listened for a car door to open, or a car to pull into the driveway, and you heard the car door open and you heard the car door close, and on this particular day, that sounds not a good one, because you know what's coming. I think we've all experienced that at some point in time, where we know that the end of our lives is about 15 seconds away. And when you know that your day, and hearing that was not a good sound, and Adam and Eve were on the same plane that day. Their father was coming to see them. And so for them it was the sound of the breeze walking through the garden, and they hid. And they hid why? Because as a part of their eye-opening, they felt their conscience and they feel their guilt and shame. This is another thing. For the first time, they couldn't tell us what it meant to have guilt.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to explain to any of us what shame is. They've never let their father down until now. So here we are experiencing guilt and shame for the first time. They don't want to face the music. Much like us. You know, some of us are fortunate enough, especially on today, with today being Father's Day, and actually we're going to, I think if we go far enough, I've commented on this, you know, where it's not that I don't want to, I'm not worried about, well, I'm not going to get ahead of myself because it's not where I'm at. I'm just going to keep going on. I'm going to stick to the script. Did you ever in your life do something to someone and then try to avoid them? So we can relate to them while they're hiding because of the fear, the guilt, and the shame that they're feeling. We felt that. Now, have you ever done something to somebody, maybe a friend or a family member, where you have intentionally tried to avoid seeing them?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to any events. I'm not going to go to this event. I'm not going to go to a family picnic. Why? Because I'm trying to avoid one particular person who I have wronged. Not that they've wronged me and I just don't want to deal with them, but I have wronged them. You know, what's the matter?
I was just telling my wife, I said, I don't know that I've done that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't recall it. Let her go ahead.
You haven't, you will.
Well, remember,
All
Brother
about
Billy
him.
doesn't lie.
Huh?
You heard me.
What?
You said Brother Billy doesn't lie.
I do too.
Okay.
He's a jerk.
But
He
I
tries to get out of stuff.
You've heard him tell me that, well, maybe we were just specifically to Santa Claus, if I recall correctly. Never mind, we'll meet afterwards and
Yeah,
I'll
we-
refresh your memory,
We don't do that.
old man.
Santa Claus stuff.
So anyway, why did you do that? You know, it's the same thing. Adam and Eve was new to them. They were fearful of their father, and they didn't want to face the music. So they ran and they hid. And now, because of this, we now have two problems. There is now a issue horizontally between man and woman. We now have a trust issue on this day. We also have a vertical issue between man and God because of disobedience. So this act now has caused two very large problems. Now it's not new to us because we were born into the nature of strife between man, and we were born with sin, so we're used to sin being in our lives where we have strife between us and God on a daily basis. So we are used to that. But for them it was new. This was not a feeling that they experienced. It's not new to us because we've experienced shame and disappointment before. We know what that feels like. And I want to take a second to look at, because we're sitting in church, like you said, we can be honest, Brother Billy, and admit that we have felt stuff like that, right? I would challenge you to know that this is what's wrong with our world today, though. There's not enough feeling of shame and guilt. People continue on with their sinful nature, doing what they're doing, and don't have a thought about it. We have and especially with our young people who are lost, they don't fear too much of anything. Whether you want to blame it on video games, whether you want to blame it on certain kinds of music, whatever the case may be, I'll tell you there's one reason for it, and that's the lack of God in their life.
Exactly.
Period. You know, the other factors may contribute to it and help it along, move it along at a faster rate, whatever the case may be, but they don't have any healthy fear. So they don't care about stealing other people's stuff. We are living in a fearless, mindless, shameless, guiltless, and accountability-less society today.
Well, you see it all over trucks, no fear.
They actually have that as a
No
slogan,
fear.
right?
A little child, you know, take a little child, it doesn't go wrong until it actually does wrong, and then it's accused of doing wrong. See what I mean? Parents say, that's wrong, and you're going to get punished for that. They don't know wrong.
Right. When my son was born, I had this thought, and I'm sure, I don't know if anybody else has or not, I'm going to assume that most of you have, but on the day he was born, there was a big change in my life. Because for me, first of all, I was there and I watched it, and for me, it was just the spiritual thing. Watching what was going on when he was born, but when I looked at him and I was holding him, I said this to myself, I'll never forget it, I believe it to this very day, a newborn baby. That's the closest thing to God that you will ever have. Ever.
Yeah, they are.
At that very moment, that baby hasn't had hate in his heart, hasn't said a mean word out of his mouth, hasn't defiled his body in any way, shape, or form, hasn't had a mean thought, nothing. That baby is as pure and innocent. The only thing that's coming into the world is the sin of me, our fathers, the forefathers of mankind upon him. But that baby is the closest thing that you will ever have in your hands to God at any one time. And the older he gets, the further away you go.
That's just the same way it was with Adam and Eve. They were pure without
Yes.
sin in their life until this sin come along and they admitted this sin, but then she blamed it on You know, there was blame, there was blame.
Yes, there was blame going back and forth, which is why I think that our altars in churches today are as bare as they are, because this problem in 2013 has become massive. Our revivals aren't like they used to be in the day. You know, our churches aren't like they used to be. Like Randy preaches all the time, there are churches that are removing all this stuff, trying to bring more people in, trying to alter the religion to fit the people instead of trying to fit the people to what God's will is. There's too much of that going on. Yes, sir?
Brother Mike, I look at 3 words in this one piece of scripture here, in verse 9. And it says, "Where art thou?" Where are we today in many of these things? Where are we?
I don't know.
That's a good text for our preacher, wouldn't it be?
Where? All right. Okay.
Where
There you go.
art
You need to
thou?
write that down.
That's the, you know, the people say, well, God was asking them where they were at.
Oh, don't get ahead of me,
He
brother.
might know.
Don't get ahead of me.
Yeah, he knew where they were.
It was for them to try to, when he said, where art thou? He wanted them to say, hey, where are you at? And that's the same thing what you're saying that right now, Brother Davis, and you're saying, Mike, is why aren't people asking?
I will be saying it. I just haven't got there yet.
We need to stop every now and then and you know, take inventory of our lives and say, where are we?
Yes,
Leave it to the preachers, and that's your whole.
Oh, yeah.
that's okay.
And
That's where God wanted it to go. And I have here another thing, like I've said too, is like the pictures of Jesus and the carvings of Jesus and this world's. I just don't believe that that people don't want to see those things in public parks. They don't want to see those things in government. It's not because they don't want religion. It's because they don't want to be reminded of what sinners they are. Get that stuff out of my face.
Yeah.
Because you're just making me feel uncomfortable.
Guilt.
It is guilt. They just don't want to recognize it for what it is. They don't want to go run and hide. They want to be out here and do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You take that stuff and get that out of my face.
Yeah.
Because I want to be comfortable in my sin.
You know, when I fell away for years and I started drinking and hanging out with folks that were doing things, and because they knew that I had been in church for so many years, they would ask me about certain things pertaining to the Bible, and I would get so furious with them, but I couldn't stop telling them.
Baby.
In spite of even being drunk. And I would ask them, please don't ask me anything, because I just don't want to discuss it. I just want to get that out of my life because of guilt. Mainly, I didn't want to have any part of it, but I couldn't help myself.
Right?
it's
Yeah.
like my brother. He could pray, and I mean, you'd have his God bumps all over you. But now he won't even sing, because he knows if he gets up anywhere, even with the family, to sing,
It's guilt.
it's going to bother.
That's God's conviction.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what we talk about when we say, you know, the more and more you ignore that, the harder and harder it's going to be to hear it. You know, practicing Christians, like we say, we look at the elders. They have many, many years of listening to it. They hear even his softest whispers of, I don't think you should do that. They hear that, and we don't. So it's just people not wanting to but it's coming from God. You can't explain it to them because they don't want to hear it. Like you said, I don't want you to tell me that the lifestyle that I'm living and I'm enjoying is wrong. Don't tell me that, because I'm not going to stop. And it's not because they don't believe a God exists. I believe it's just because they just don't want to be convicted. They don't want to feel bad about what they're doing. Fantastic. All right, Genesis chapter 3, verse number 9. We're there. And the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee, thou shouldst not eat? Called is kara, and it means to call out, to read, to cry out, proclaim. So that kind of would imply that when he called out for Adam, it wasn't a gentle, oh, come here, son. He was Adam. He was not happy.
Yeah, but God asked him a question. He says,
There, and then afraid. Let me get there. The word afraid is the only other word that we're really not familiar with in these two verses. We haven't done it before. Yareh, and it means to fear, revere, or be afraid. So now go ahead. What were you going to say about the question?
God asked him a question there. Said, hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldn't eat? Should eat? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay. We see God calling Adam here, right? And they're foundational, right? We've talked about this. Book of Genesis is foundational for the rest of the Bible. So when we're reading what we're reading, we got to think about what we're reading. Number one, men, on Father's Day, I'm telling you this, you're responsible for your house.
Don't be preaching my message if I'm not allowed to go ahead on your stuff.
I told you before, brother, I am doing the Lord's work.
And Dad waving.
Yes, sir?
Can you imagine that Adam was afraid of the voice of God before?
No.
No, he wasn't.
No. No.
But he after he did that, then he was afraid of the voice of God.
I think that, again, if we keep, this is just me, because I'm the one that always relates the relationship between us and God to us and our parents, children-parent relationship. I think that there are times when our parents talk to us and we hear the tone of their voice and we can see their body language and we feel comfort, we feel love, we know that this is easygoing. Then there are the times when we hear the tone of the voice and we go, uh-oh.
When they use your full name.
Whatever it is, there's something about our parents, and we all know what it is. Growing up as children, we knew that, okay, today this isn't going to be good. This isn't going to work out all right at all. I might as well just go ahead and give up because this is no good.
To the woodshed.
Or carrying a belt, walking in the room with the belt, that's it. I'm done. So I think that for the first time, when God cried out for Adam, he heard a tone of voice he was not familiar with. And it instilled immediately fear in him.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike too, I think God has given Adam the opportunity to tell him the truth here. Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou should not eat?
Dave's looking, he's talking, and Brother Dave's looking at me. You gotta say no, Mike.
I love this.
Come on. You hear that, right? Guys are a pair over there.
Well, God knew it all along, but he wants Adam to.
He does. He does. He wants him to confess.
He wants him to man up and he blames him for it.
So that when I actually get there, it'll be a review.
You knew this was coming.
I know. Hey, you know what? I love this. I absolutely love it. You know what? When we can have a good time learning God's Word, enjoy it and soak it in and remember it, there is nothing better than that.
Sunday school teaching and I've learned before, is a good, everybody get together and have opinions, and it's a good discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Without question. I'm still going to stick to my script. Even though I am now digressing. We see God calling Adam. we see that what foundationally, what we should walk away from here is men, guess what? We're responsible spiritually. We are responsible of the house. The head of the house of Christ, the head of the house as Christ is head of the church, and God is the Father of all of us. Not the God, and we see, we're not talking about the God of lettuce. We're talking about of our house, of this church. He is not the goddess, He is God the Father. Okay? Now, we see in this eye-opening state, Adam has a reverent fear of God. Again, probably the first time he's ever heard this tone coming from God the Father. What's up?
She just asked me to say God of lettuce.
God of lettuce. Yeah, just some people that worship lettuce, whatever. They worship anything. But see, the head of lettuce can't cry out to you and say, hey, you're in trouble. God the Father will let you know you're in trouble. And you better rely on Him or you're going to stay in trouble.
Yeah.
No Buddha idol, no cow, whatever it is that you want to worship is going to do that for you. And the goddess of lightning has got nothing on. In fact, there is none. How about that? All right. And I said, we're going to get, today is Father's Day. We have dads that even as grown men, we have a healthy respect for and fear. Now, when we're growing up, we're fearful that our dad will yoke us right up out of our shoes. We grow up with a fear that, hey, most of us, my dad would throw me around and let me know he was in charge. And so, therefore, I had a fear of that. That's not happening today. But my fear is different as a grown man. Today, my fear is that I'm going to disappoint him. That I'm going to hurt him emotionally, somehow. And I don't want to do that. And you know, I may not be afraid of him taking me to the woodshed anymore. But I'm afraid that I'm going to let down the family name. I'm afraid that I'm going to, like I said, disappoint him.
You know, society has changed so much. We know that if you punish your child, if I punish my child, he punishes his child, and the authorities find out about it, pretty soon there's going to be a knock on the door. There's going to be a deputy sheriff and a little woman, that little girl or guy that has a little sheepskin psychologist degree in child psychology, and say, you have damaged your child, and you're going to answer for this in court. That's what happened.
That's on sheepskin.
We can put the handcuffs on you.
Whatever it is.
And when you get out of jail, you can spank their butt again and just do it over and over and over.
You know, you could have done that back then too, but my dad used to tell me, and I never even brought it up, and he would say to me, here's the phone if you want to call somebody.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did that too to my son.
But on top of that, there's also, Brother Cletus, situations where there are too many boys in today's society who don't even know their father.
Yeah, I know that.
And there's a big problem with that. Most of you can understand what I'm talking about because you've had a father and you know what I'm talking about. But there are, in 2013, I think we can all agree, there are too many boys who would sit here and be lost in this conversation. What are you talking about? I don't fear none of you. Because, a part of this is they have to do everything on their own. They're providing for themselves, they're teaching themselves, they're leading themselves. How can they possibly understand this?
Yeah.
Because they're doing everything on their own. And then, they don't get the meaning of disobedience or obedience and love and leadership. They don't get any of that. No. So how can they understand or develop, or not develop a warped definition of these things? And how do they understand the love leadership of God when they don't even have an earthly example to look to? God can do anything. And if He wants somebody to fall in line, somebody's going to fall in line. But I'm saying, traditionally how God intended, a man is supposed to be an example of this. So men who lead their sons to believe that you don't have to stay, and then we have bad examples. So we have society, like Brother Cletus said, saying you can't do this and you can't do that. And then we have a situation where boys don't have daddies. And now we have boys and girls both. I shouldn't leave them out. You're leading children, whether they're boys or girls, it's irrelevant. But now we have bad examples. So we have men teaching young men that it's okay to not stay in relationships. It's okay to cheat on your girlfriend or your mother.
Yeah.
It's okay to beat her. It's okay to not have a job.
Yeah. Oh, that's a four-letter word. You know, work.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They don't like that.
Yeah. You don't have to have romance. You don't have to have any respect for each other. And you don't have to work because the government has these programs, and if all else fails, you can go to prison, because prison provides you with 3 hots and a cot. You get free health care. You get free education. You know, so it's okay for you to not have to do anything.
3 square meals a day.
3 hots and a cot.
Yeah. I have a nephew.
God said if you don't work,
I have
you
a
don't
nephew
eat.
in Florida that had been in prison all of his life. 13 times he's been in prison. That's all he knows. That's the way he eats. 3 meals a day.
He doesn't know how to live on the outside of prison.
Yep.
Because he wasn't taught in a godly home.
Right. Exactly.
We see here, but you know, and I know that we're digressing, but we're looking here. Adam had a leader, which was God. You know, and we find ourselves in the situation that we're in. And moving on to that, we're going to stick closely to this and be able to relate to a lot of our parental things here. When we see that God was going to find Adam. Now, when you heard that when you did something wrong and you heard that car door close and you knew your dad was coming in the house, or your mother, whoever was the one that was issuing the discipline, did you feel like you could get away from it?
No.
You were trapped almost. I mean, eventually you were going to get it.
We wanted to get away from it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Mom always said, "You'll come back."
A lot of people say that you can run, but you can't hide. Yes, sir?
My mother, and he can witness to this, we would do something at 6 o'clock in the morning, before daylight, if we happened to do something wrong and you were great. She would say, "Sonny, remind Mommy to whip you before you go to bed." And every 30 minutes, I'm going up there, or he was going up there and shaking her dress down and said, "Mom, you want to whip me now?" No. But remind me to whip you before you go to bed. Oh.
So you worry about it
You
all
go to
day.
bed? Okay, here she comes, tippy-toe, 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 down through the house, you know, with the bell.
You thought you had made it. Well, she forgot.
Yeah.
But anyway, in church Sunday school, we were in church Sunday school every Sunday. As soon as the doors opened, we were there, Mom and Dad.
Yes, we were.
And if we made one little flicker of noise that Mom didn't, she'd snap her finger and point her finger at you, and you knew that your hide was on a tanning block when you got home.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, see, me
Right.
and Crystal
That was
each had
disturbing in church.
we each had 6-foot switches. That way she could reach across part of it and I could reach across the other part and we'd get them.
Yeah, that was terrible. Let me tell you. If they'd sit one on each end, right? And if the one in the middle did something bad, every one of us got hit. They both started hitting the one in the middle. Well, it was hitting all of us at the same time.
When you took your knife and cut a ring around the switch, that was trouble. I mean, you had to go back and get a bigger one yet.
And his mommy would come into church carrying a switch.
Oh, yeah.
Many times.
I did
She
too.
had a switch in hand when she came into church.
Yep.
Did it work?
It
Yes.
worked very well.
Okay, good.
It worked.
We
A
were
lot of people say that you can run, but you can't hide. My comment to you is, you can't even run. You're just wasting energy.
Definitely can't.
God's gonna get you somewhere.
Because you can run from me.
I've tried.
And that would be actually pretty easy to run from me because I'm not chasing you. But God is everywhere. And you are not going to escape Him. So Adam really was safe nowhere. And it's just pure fear. They ask people, who get in high-speed chases over an outstanding parking ticket. Why did you flee the police because of an outstanding parking ticket? Because I was scared. You'll do a lot of things that are very stupid when you're scared. But you're not going to outrun, and you can't hide from God. Remember when you were young and amazed at just how much? Wait, let me go back. Also, we see here Adam telling on himself. How did he tell on himself?
Said he was naked.
Said he was naked. God asked Adam, "Where art thou?"
Oh, yeah.
Adam starts running off, and he just says, "Because I was naked." God didn't ask that question.
Yeah, he said, Lord, I hid myself in these goods.
Because I was naked. Now, do you remember when we were young and we were amazed at just how much our parents knew? We thought that it was something magical. And if your dad was anything like me, when I tell my son, Jack, I know everything. Okay? I know everything. They actually believed that for a while. Because you're paying attention. Okay? And people tell on themselves. And what we have here is God didn't mention anything about being naked. And Adam just said, I hid from you because I was naked. Now, how did you know that?
Yeah.
Because the way I designed you, you weren't supposed to know that.
He didn't even know what hiding was. Because
He didn't know what naked was.
no.
He ate of the fruit, and he had that knowledge now that conscience telling him, I've done this wrong and I have to admit it.
Yeah. I always thought that my mom, because my dad worked numerous jobs and he was never home. So, but I always thought that my mom left a camera somewhere in the house. I would look for this because she would know what I did when she wasn't even there.
Yeah.
She would come home and who did this and who touched that and blah, blah, blah. And of course, Mike was always the one that did it because Mike was the one that didn't want to listen.
They blamed it on Mikey.
Yeah, I know it. Blame it. Give it to Mikey. He eats anything. And parents, we learn to listen very carefully. So if you imagine God walking through and all of a sudden you start talking about something you shouldn't know about, and then imagine that there's only one place that you can get it, and God is all-knowing and we as parents are not, but it is close that when, I have an example. Hi, Dad. I was a good girl today. I didn't break that Giants glass with the helmet on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Then you say it was Thomas.
Yeah. But the problem is, I already know that it was you. I already know what it was you, and I probably know which class it was because I have them down to a T.
My mom used to get me to confess. It took me a long time to figure this out. But she used to say she could smell when I lied. When I was lying, she wanted to smell my hand. Can you smell your hand?
Marks on her finger.
I'd always tell. It's like, she had me. It took me a while to figure out, she's just pulling my leg,
Yeah, about the hand part, but that was probably you that was saying something that she got wise to and knew that you weren't telling the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why I also look at, some people that I just know are lying to me and I remind them, I'm 43 years old, I've been telling lies for a long time and I'm a lot better at it than you are.
I used to tell my kids I had eyes in the back of my
Yeah,
hand.
I've heard that too, yeah.
Mommy did. Mommy could be
And-
reaching for something with her back turned.
Billy's big brother, Charlie, he was about 5 and he got behind me and he was separating my hair because I always knew when he was up to something.
And you know what? And today, as adults, you know what it is? A lot of the times I see what's going on behind me, and I've said that too. I've got eyes in the back of my head, but so I'm looking at the glass and I can see a reflection, and I can actually see everything you're doing. You know, I don't have to turn around. I'm using the things around me, and I can see you. But as a child, you don't understand that. So you really believe I've got eyes in the back of my head. You know? And here on this day, God's walking through the... First of all, He already knows. And I have said this, Thomas will tell you, I let him know when they're fumbling and they're thinking about it. You know what? Here, let me make this easy for you. I already know the answer to the question.
Don't do it.
So just answer it. What happened to whatever? Who did this? I'm just going to let you know. I already know. So just tell the truth. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, but they don't know that. You know, but most of the time I already know who did what. Because each one of them has a character and a personality, and I know who's going to do what. You know?
Brother Mike, my kids, my boys, I should say, when they were at the age where they was out running around in their own vehicles and stuff, and I'd wait for them to get home. And I'd say, I know what you did. I know what you did tonight. Well, how do you know? I said, you forget, boys. We have lived around here all of our life. I've got many friends that know my number.
Yeah, that's a fact. They call and tell you. Another thing that they don't get, and Randy will contest with this because me and him are on the same page with this. They don't put things back where they got them.
No.
You don't think I know where my stuff is? Do you really think that I don't know where I put my own stuff? And then when I go for it and it's not there, and I see it laying in your room, I know who took it and I know who didn't put it back. And I know who is now in trouble. They're like, well, how did he know that? Oh, because you didn't put it back. I wouldn't know, and I probably wouldn't care if you would take care of it and put it back. But my problem is you don't put it back.
Or don't put it back exactly where it was.
Well,
and how it was.
Taking it off of my shadow board and then putting it back on the workbench doesn't count as putting it back where you got it. You put it back up on the shadow board where it belongs, with the right shadow.
And I have another thing about that. My kids had to ask permission to play with their siblings' things before they could play with them.
And what's the point of all of this? The point of all of this is that even as earthly moms and dads, we know the deal. However it works out for you, you know the deal. And on this day, the Heavenly Father walked through the garden and He asked some questions. And we'll get to some more of them next week. But He asked some questions. He already knew the answers. He already knew where Adam was. He already knew what Adam did. And one of the things that we're going to talk about that was so disappointing on this day was that Adam and Eve failed to tell the truth. They failed to take personal responsibility. They failed to confess with a truly repentant heart. They disappointed God. And they blamed God.
I heard that voice in the room.
So that's the point of what we're talking about. You know, as parents, we have done these things. We've asked questions that we've known the answers to. We have our own ways. And this is where I put in here, Sister Kathy, that, you know, when we're dealing with our kids and they frustrate us and we know that they've done something, and then we say, and then with what we just say, oh, well, bless their little hearts. You know.
They didn't mean to.
Yeah, they didn't mean to.
It was for accident.
Brother David, brother Mike and Bruce Canada. Adam didn't have to see God. He said, I didn't see you. He said, I heard your voice.
Yeah.
I didn't have to see you. I heard your voice.
Right.
I knew I was guilty.
He said, I heard your voice walking in the cool of the evening.
Yes. Can I tell you that
Boys walking?
He asked another question in verse 11. Who told thee that thou wast naked? Guess what? God already knew that too. God knew what was going on. You know, He heard. Listen, we believe here today, in this church right now, I'm hoping that everybody sitting here believes that God is omnipresent. He knows everything that's going on. He knows what's in our hearts. He knows what's in our mind.
Yes, he does.
With all these people on the planet, he only had to keep track of 2. Do you think he didn't know?
He knows it before we do it.
It's all planned out.
And if you go on, I'm getting a little ahead, but if you go on into the book of Romans, and you'll find out that God did not blame Eve. The blame was on Adam because of Adam's sin.
Adam's transgression, yeah.
Because of Adam's transgression, that we see. Eve was in Adam. Eve was in Adam all along. Eve was in Adam
And God called him
until God did the surgery and Eve.
caused him to sleep.
And as we talked about marriage, the 2 became one anyway. Even when she was outside of Adam, they're still one.
Yeah.
So
She was in Adam all along.
So we can understand as we close and get ready to take a break here before service, we understand what's going on here. There's more to it than just, hey, Adam, where art thou? And when you read through this, God knew everything. He knew the answers to these questions. Brother, I don't want to let you go. Did you had something to say?
Yeah, I think in here from verse 6, it said the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was very pleasant to the eye. Okay, she was seeing. It comes down to 7, and it said the eyes of both of them were open. To me, what I get out of the lesson is from natural to spiritual.
Yeah.
See, after God come in the presence, they was ashamed to hid themselves.
Right.
Because they knew they had strength.
All because they did that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, can we say that? I don't know if there was anything special about that tree. God set boundaries.
Yeah.
He just said, I want you to obey this one. Do not. And we talked about this. We had 3 commandments. Remember this as we review. We were supposed to go forth and multiply. We were, what was the third one? The second one.
Tend to the garden.
We were supposed to tend to the garden and then do not. And we talked about this one because this was the first one where it was specific. Do not eat of this one tree.
Yeah.
He set boundaries. And he said, because if you do, you're going to have a new perspective on life. And it's not going to be good.
It's more or less your own.
And it will bring you death. So don't do it. They did. And that's when it was like, now we have, at that moment, we now start our spiritual battles. I agree with you, 100%. Because up until then, all they had to do was depend on God, right?
Yep.
God was providing everything. Now, we have our spiritual battle. The devil, on that day, he got his foot in the door. On that day.
So let me say that. So I don't want to take my time, but
It's past the time you're taking now.
So if God had not said to Adam, don't do that, don't eat of that, you think the devil would have, you think the serpent would have tempted Eve?
Sure.
See, God said, don't eat. That's why the devil tempted Eve.
Sure.
God said, don't do this. And the devil tempted her and she did it.
Yeah, he was the third party in the garden. Adam and Eve was first, and then the serpent came along.
I say they should cut his head off.
Lord.
All right, let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. Be back in. Good job.
Bless you, Brother Mike.
I ain't walking with all that wet grass. In my pocket.
Sing that beautiful old song. I'll fly away.
Oh, thank you so much.
Take a couple weeks for you to do that.
Okay, I will. Yep. Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Now, what was I saying?
we were talking about lying, and I had said that everybody lies. I made the statement that everybody, where'd he go? Oh,
You had said,
I made the
You had
statement that
said-
everybody lies.
everybody has avoided somebody before doing them.
No, I'm talking about like months ago, we were talking, I forget what book it was we were in, and it was talking about lying. And I said, everybody lies. Everybody does. I don't believe it. Nobody lies. You are, you don't lie.
That was a joke.
I take you seriously.
That was a joke.
So you were lying.
But today, when you said that people that avoid,
Yeah.
avoided other people, and I said to myself, and I don't think I've done it.
I avoided people like today. Because I couldn't bring myself to apologize for something that I've done. You know? That's good. Yeah, I'm just saying. I took you seriously. Because I used a few examples and you were like, no. I was like, so you don't tell your kids that Santa Claus is real. No, I don't. So if your wife comes and she cooks a good meal, but if she asks you, do you like it? You don't tell her a white lie. You're like, no, I'll let her know because I don't want her to make a bad meal again. So I'm thinking to myself, he's telling me the truth. He doesn't lie. I do lie. Everybody lies. I'm sorry that you got that out of that.
I'm leaving for Disney World tomorrow.
Well, you travel safely.
Mickey Mouse. Come on.